Hey everybody, I'm Russo, and I do a little work here and there. It looks like we're back in the research workshop, this time again looking at the miniatures that I'm putting into Unreal Engine 4, sort of as sprites, but there's a bit of a catch, where it's a sort of 3D terrain and photographic 2D sprite sort of look. I like to think of something like Final Fantasy Tactics or the first two Fallout games if you could rotate the camera around, and you can see that's basically what I've got here. The minis being from Blood Bowl and the walls being from a sci-fi thing that I'm doing concurrently. And yeah, I guess the idea is textures from photo. But yeah, that is what it is. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about them moving around. So they are flat pictures of actual miniatures that are sort of on a plane that's kept perpendicular to the camera. And then there's some math and a lot of branches. But this is sort of what it looks like. It's orthographic, isometric at times, and really probably just the cornerstone for the entire project. But really, we are interested in how it works. So we will move over to the event graph, and please excuse my mess. It looks a lot better than it used to. And for proof, here, check it out. With all that cross-hatching, it looks like an old Hellboy comic. But moving back to the cleaner one, we'll just start at the top and go with the flow. So, event tick every frame, set world rotation of the sphere component, which in this case also affects the spring arm and thus the paper flipbook, to the camera's rotation plus 180 yaw. And the purpose of this is to make the paper flipbook point in the opposite direction of the camera, which is important for our whole orthographic thing. So after set world rotation, we would go straight to this compare float, but because we need to take care of some things for subsequent ticks, as it were, it first jumps over to the sequence, but we're not going to talk about that right now, because really, the first time this runs, all of these branches are going to come up false. And then we're just going to find ourselves back at compare float, where we are taking the velocity of the capsule component, breaking the vector, adding x, y, and z together, and comparing that float to 0. If it's exactly 0, then we know it's not moving. If it's any more or less than 0, then we know it is moving. And from that information, I'm setting the play rate of the flipbook component to either 0 or 3. After that, we get to the bottom of the big tree. Regardless of everything else, the playback speed and all that, the flow is now going to go through one of a series of branches. The false conditions on these branches just run through all of the other ones until you get to that last one there, and you don't really have to worry about that because at least one of these is going to be true. The reason that we know that they won't all be false is because of those conditions, and if we look up at the conditions, we'll see that we've basically made an entire circle with nearly equal float functions. So for each position that the photographs of the miniature can be in, we have a division. So error tolerance of 11.25 means that each division is 22.5 degrees, and I do have an extra one up there because it just loops from negative 180 to 180. I mean, I probably could have left that out, I don't know, but I wasn't taking the risk. Somebody else report back, and I might take those out. But for now they stay. Moving on. This group of nearly equal floats on the left breaks the rotation from the camera component, and the one on the right breaks the rotation from the capsule component. So the sphere always points the opposite direction of the camera component, and we don't need to worry about that. And from these two little bits of information, we can build that tree. So back to it. This, as I said, is sort of the roots of the tree, and all of the conditions here go into that left group of nearly equal float. This is the camera check portion, and all of these are just matched up with the ones up there. So for instance, the branch that's sitting up on the top is negative 180, the one under it is 180, and so on and so forth. So once it's seen which direction the camera is facing, that sends it to the matching group of branches further up in the tree. All of those have conditions that go back to the right-hand group of nearly equal float functions, which again are linked to the capsule component. The true condition on every branch that's in the topmost 4x4 grid there links to the appropriate do once that's over here on the left. Each one of them is basically the same setup, just once. You write the paper flipbook's current frame number to a variable. Then you set it to the appropriate flipbook given the camera and capsule components rotations. And then you set the playback position in frames to whatever the frame number variable was. And you're good. course, these things do say do once, and for what it's worth, they really mean it. And that brings us back to the little detour between set world rotation and compare float, which, if you remember, was that long sequence thing over there. And really, this sequence is key, because without it, you can have a number of problems. So what each of these sections does is to check to see if the current paper flipbook is not one of the 16 that you're using for that particular miniature. So the idea is you don't want to reset one of the do onces while you're going in that direction, because it will constantly reset the frame count, and even if you're moving, it won't look like you're moving. So, like I said before, if it gets to one of these branches and the paper flipbook reference is not the current paper flipbook, then it resets the corresponding do once. But if it is the referenced paper flipbook, then it returns false, and then it sends it out to compare float. And that really is that. I don't know if it's more or less complicated than it sounds. But to recap, every frame, set world rotation, reset all the do onces you can, see if the mini's moving or not, and set its playback speed accordingly. Then check the rotation of the camera, check the rotation of the capsule component, and set an appropriate paper flipbook. After that, rinse and repeat. How you move them, as always, is up to you. And, of course, without camera rotation, you could cut the number of branches down by, I don't know, there's like 305 there in the tree. So yeah, you could have that down to 17 or so. And that doesn't count the ones in other places. So yeah, looking pretty good, needs a bit of cleaning up, but hey, it works. And though I know it is not the most elegant of solutions, I suppose working is good enough for me right now. So future plans for this, once I get it cleaned up a little bit more, or, the rest of the way, whatever, I'll take some screenshots and post them to the Facebook group. And there's a link somewhere, but, just look for Russo Works. It's written right over there. One word should be, but you probably don't need screenshots. You could just watch the video over and over and over, or take your own screenshots, whatever. Me cleaning it up isn't going to help you clean it up, and trust me, you don't want to do it after like I'm doing. You want to take care of this well in advance. So yeah, I got to finish cleaning this up, so I think it's time for me to bow out. So until next time, this has been the Research Workshop on Russo Works, and I'm Rousseau, out.